Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's nice to see you today. My name is Dustin Cormier, and this is How to Rock Astrology. We are continuing our discussion and reading of Light on Life by Robert E. Svodoba and Hart, Fouw. We are still on Chapter 2, discussing the essential philosophy of Jyotish. We're kind of like halfway through now, through the chapter. And we are at the part where we're talking about remedy and what remedies mean in the context of karma. This is an important, very important aspect and part of this whole thing, of course, because it's one thing for a doctor to diagnose you, it's another thing for a doctor to treat you. And Jyotishis ideally can do both. And the world of remedies, at some level, is the world of dealing constructively with what are our transmutable, changeable karmas. We just talked in the last episode that some karmas are sanchita, which means so deeply, the deep oceanic backdrop of all of our karmic actions put all together in this lifetime and the next. Prarabdha karmas are karmas in this lifetime, which are, or at least they're coming up on the ledger in order for it to be experienced and worked through either in this life or the next one, but sometime soon. Kriyamana karmas are essentially those karmas which have burst into free will and are actively working themselves out in the present incarnation, which means we have a grip on them and we have to deal with them, although they might be fixed or unfixed, as we talked about in our last episode. But ultimately, it's only the Kriyamana karmas that we have the capacity to deal with in some way, or to experience in some way. So it's the Kriyamana karma that we can deal with, and it's Agama karma, which is the positive, constructive transmutation of the potentials made available through Kriyamana karma. Right? So, going into our discussion on remedies. What we read is that upaya, Sanskrit for method, refers in Jyotish to the use of agama and kriyamana karmas to remedy adverse astrological combinations. Though it's not formally one of Jyotish's limbs, this phantom limb may well be its most important and useful derivation and division. Jyotish can often diagnose the good and bad times one will encounter in life, but it is upaya which can help to augment the good and mitigate the bad. The existence of upaya shows that Jyotish is anything but fatalistic, for if everything were totally predestined, how could remedies exist? A well-motivated person who's given a method by which to neutralize some undesirable karmas will implement that method for whatever time and with whatever intensity is necessary. But a poorly motivated person will either lack the discipline to follow through or will find the obstacles cropping up regularly to interrupt the process. Obstacles to an upaya occur particularly for dridha karmas, since the force of the karma strongly discourages a change in direction in that area of life. The karmas will themselves interfere with the person's motivation to implement the remedy. Dridha means fixed, right? So for fixed karmas, the force of the karma strongly discourages a change in direction in that area of life. So the karmas themselves interfere with the person's motivation to implement the remedy. The remedy's right there, but they feel like they somehow are not capable or undeserving, or that those karmas are just part of them in that sort of sad way that often happens to people. Now, when the karma is not fixed, adridha, the the Jyotishi will expect immediate change on commencement of an upaya. If the karmas are drida adrida, which means fixed and non-fixed, the results are anticipated after some concentrated efforts, often after a period of 40 days. 40 days is a common thing. Change your life in 40 days. It's a bit of a fad trend because it takes 40 days to completely implement a new neuroplasticity in one's neuroprogramming, in one's habitual programming. But even for those who do persevere, transformation of fixed karmas may not necessarily be expected during this lifetime, though a slight modification of results will perhaps be secretly anticipated. So long as the upayas are patiently and consistently resorted to over the course of this incarnation, however, they will act as well-planted seeds whose crop of desired results will be reaped sometime during a future incarnation. Your willing sacrifice for the pain now in order to appease the crystallization of karma, these actions will plant well-planted seeds in order that a positive kriyamana, an openness, a potential to transmute will be available in the next life. Remedies exist for every planet except, of course, for Uranus, Neptune, or Pluto, which are never part of traditional Jyotish. The methods of upaya are almost endless, but a partial list includes mantras, sacred syllables, hymns, or prayers, which flow from the heart, devoid of elaborate ritual, recitation of ritually elaborate private and or public mantras that may go on for days, months, or years, the wearing of specific gemstones or other objects, the consumption of particular foods or other elaborately prepared substances, the observance of fasts and other vows, worship of the fire, the planets, and certain deities, as well as specific acts of charity, karma work. The tradition of upaya is partly oral and partly written. The Karmatha Guru of Pandit Mukund. There's a lot of syllables here. Okay, so the tradition of upaya is partly oral and partly written. The Karmatha Guru of a Pandit named Mukundavalabha being one representative work which details some of the more elaborate rituals. It has been said that if all existing upayas were written out, their literature would greatly exceed that of all the numerous branches of Jyotish. Now, just because remedies exist and are given does not mean that one is home free. Suppose you want to use a gemstone as an upaya, perhaps a diamond, to correct some Venusian imbalance. How well this remedy will work will depend on how accurate is the diagnosis, how appropriate is the diamond, for all diamonds are different, who gives the upaya, how the stone is empowered, the muhurta for all the above, and for the time the stone is obtained, set, and first worn. So it can get quite complex. The above criteria apply to every remedy, including especially the use of bija mantras, seed sounds. Bija means seed, and a bija mantra is a sound which, like a seed, enters one's consciousness and sprouts into a devata, a deity. In Jyotish, each planet has a bija mantra, which can create the energy of that planet in the consciousness of whoever repeats it properly. No bija mantra for Uranus, Neptune, or Pluto appears anywhere in classical Jyotish. To use a bija mantra properly, you must first establish that the planet in question needs to be strengthened. Then you must ensure that you are using the correct mantra, which you must receive during an initiation at an appropriate muhurta. You must also begin to recite the mantra at an appropriate moment. Even then, you must be very careful because bija mantras are very, very, very powerful. For better or worse. Typically for the better, a surgeon's knife is a strong, powerful tool because it's so sharp. It can render flesh and it can slice through things like butter. And in the right hands, it is put to that purpose, and we want it to be sharp for that reason. Bija mantras are like this. We want them to be strong and powerful in order to transmit their change. But whenever you do it, you want to, if you're invoking the power of Jupiter at a time where, right now it's 2020 and Jupiter is conjunct Saturn and Pluto in its debilitation sign of Capricorn. If you were to do a bija mantra to invoke the power of Jupiter right now, all things considered, I don't know, I'm not an expert on this particular remedy consciousness, but it leaves a question in the mind as to whether, maybe the negative energetic torrents of this rather difficult Jupiter situation at present would perforate the time upon which you started to take from a guru this bija mantra, and maybe your guru would be aware of this if they're a good guru, and all of this context counts. I digress. Remedies is a very interesting consciousness in Jyotish. The consciousness of it is important for me more than anything. Now I hope you guys have dug that little video. Next up in our discussion, we're going to be talking about the grahas in a philosophical sort of expositional sense. We're not going to get into the specifics of them. We haven't really gotten into astronomy or astrology just yet. We're really breaking down still the philosophy of Sankhya philosophy and the essential philosophy of the Veda upon which Jyotish is founded. And the grahas are included in this. It's interesting that astrology is not necessarily spiritual, but the Vedic people would contend that spirituality is necessarily astrological. You're going to find out what I mean in the next episode. So for now, thanks for watching, folks. I'm Dustin Cormier. This is How to Rock Astrology. Let me know if you're liking the videos, and I'll see you guys on the next episode. Take care.